Hi, I'm David Burkett. I'm the convener of SNP Peterhead. Now this month is Pride Month. The arrival of it may have been eclipsed a wee bit by Jubilees and Tory confidence votes. But as you all know, SNP Peterhead likes to go beyond just a change a logo for the month to show our support. So here I am. In this video we'll discuss, among other things, why men have nipples. Look, there's always going to be naysayers in the world, but it's fair to say that the great majority of reasonable people are now generally accepting a lesbian, gay and bisexual people, and the world is a better place for it. But it's also fair to say that transgender people still struggle for the same level of acceptance. Many people use the sex not gender trope as a reason to argue against advancing transgender rights, saying they aren't separate considerations. Many pro-trans people say the two are very separate and distinct issues. Lots of people make the assignment of biological sex sound really simple and argue that advancing transgender rights actually goes against science. Like those who would post billboards with simplistic statements like woman equals adult, human, female. But is it really this black and white? I decided to do a bit of research. Let's look at what I learned. Now, if you're anything like I was before I did this film, then your understanding of science, particularly biology, will be pretty basic. You'll probably think that biological sex is caused by chromosomes. Looked at simply, pre-fertilization, all eggs are inherently female. And that is why men have nipples. I was always under the impression that sex is determined at conception by these chromosomes, and if you have a Y chromosome, you're a male. XX equals female, XY equals male. This is chromosomal sex, and until I did the research for this video, I always thought this resulted in your assigned birth gender. But is that your biological sex? Well, no, it isn't. Because chromosomes are just collections of genes. We should all know by now how babies are made, but after all the fun stopped and you're enjoying a post-coital cuddle or cigarette or whatever your pleasure is, there's a bit of a battle going on and amongst all this newly mixed up genetic material, and the genes that survive that battle determine the characteristics of any resultant child. Everything from height, hair and skin colour, skin tone, sheer facial features, stuff so much deeper than that as well, are a result of which genetic material survives this battle. But the biggest issue of all, the one which will likely have the biggest effect on your life, on your prospects, on your identity, is controlled by one gene. Just one tiny gene, generally found on the Y chromosome. It's called the SRY gene. Having an active SRY gene means you'll develop testicles as opposed to ovaries, making you genetically and physically male. So is this biological sex? Generally, it is, but not always. Because in all the melee of the aforementioned genetic battle, it is possible for that SRY gene to become detached from a Y chromosome. Sometimes it's lost altogether. Sometimes it can even attach itself to an X chromosome. Well, what does this mean? Well, there are a few possibilities. The great majority of us will be one of two biological makeups. XX with no SRY gene. That means you'll be physically, chromosomally and genetically female. Or XY with an active SRY gene attached to the Y chromosome. Physically, chromosomally and genetically male. But some of us will be XY with no SRY gene at all. This means you'd have ovaries, you'd appear female and would be assigned that gender at birth. Chromosomally, you'd be male, but genetically, physically, you'd be female. XX with an SRY gene. This means you'd have testicles. You'd appear male and be assigned that gender at birth. You'd be chromosomally female, but genetically and physically male. So surely after all this biology, we've got right down to the root of what we refer to as biological sex. Well, maybe not. You see, sex-related genes ultimately turn on hormones in specific areas of the body, and reception of those hormones by cells throughout the body also contributes to a human developmental process generally known as puberty. Being a hormonal male means that you'll produce normal levels of male-associated hormones. But some females, particularly XY chromosomal with no SRY gene females, will produce higher levels of male-associated hormones than some males, particularly males who are double X chromosome with an SRY gene. The same is also true in reverse with female-associated hormones. And as if this wasn't confusing enough, whichever chromosomal makeup you are, as your body's developing, it may not develop enough hormones at all for your genetic sex, leading you to be genetically male or female, chromosomally male or female, but hormonally non-binary. Unless, of course, your cells have something to say about it. You see, cells have receptors that hear the signals from sex hormones, but sometimes those receptors don't work. Like a mobile phone that's been switched off or run out of battery. The hormones call and call, but the cell never answers. What does all this even mean? Well, it means someone could be any combination of the following: genetically male or female, chromosomally male or female, hormonally male, female or non-binary, with cells that may or may not hear or respond to any of that, leading to a body that can be male, female, or in some cases, non-binary. It's all too much to compute, isn't it? I mean, that's some amount of combinations. Have you noticed how confusing it gets? Now, can you imagine actually experiencing this, rather than just observing and commenting on it from a distance? And knowing what you know now, is it fair to judge people living through this? Of course, you could just try appealing to the majority by saying, most people are either male or female, and statistically, you would be right. But the fact is, hardly any of us know this genetic truth about anyone, even ourselves. I have never had my chromosomes examined, never had my gene sequence, or had my hormones measured. And why should I? If I did, I might find that my chromosomal sex doesn't match my physical sex. Or if I was to have Mrs. Burkett genetically sequenced, I might find that she's a chromosomal male. But even if I had that information, does it really change anything? Now, I don't know about you, but learning this changed my thinking on this issue. I've always been accepting LGBTQI people, and that hasn't changed, but now I'm more understanding too. What I did learn is that the proclamation on that billboard isn't as black and white as the letters it was printed in. And that while biological sex is thankfully simple for most of us, in some cases it's really quite complicated. So before you're tempted to treat someone a certain way based on your own and most likely misinformed assessment of their biological sex and identity, ask yourself, have you seen your own chromosomes? Do you know the genetic sequence of the people you love? What are the hormone levels of your best mates? Do you know if their cells are even listening to their hormones? I suspect that the answer to all of those questions is going to be a big, fat no. Biology can be complicated, folks, but kindness and respect don't have to be. So with that in mind, please be kind. Respect the right of people to tell you who they are. Resist the temptation to tell them who you think they should be. Remember that you don't have all the answers. Finally, if you're a Scottish independence supporter who is anti-GRA, anti-trans, and knowing what you know now, we'd ask you to consider one crucial question. Why would you support self-determination for your country with one breath, but oppose it for individuals who live here with the next? Cheers.